hello to each of you in your respective places. I know that your hearts are full and you are smiling. If not, get it together. If not, by the end of today's segment, we will sure find that sweet spot to have joy, true joy in the morning, which is somewhat of in alignment with our theme for today. I want to welcome each of you to Conversations in the Nick of Time. I am your host, Nikki Roach, and we want to send out a thank you and an awesome graciousness that has been shown to us over these past 3 years from Sparkman Publications, KSTL 690 Jubilee, and Covenant Exchange LLC, our sponsors that hold us down, that cover us. I mean, actually cover us, and we're most grateful. And then to each and every one of you, thank you so much for joining us and keeping this segment going. As you can see, much work, much effort has been in action and taken place to bring you some good stuff. And I'm pretty pleased with what we've been bringing, but there's always room for growth. So continue to send your information to us, your recommendations and suggestions and guest ideas. We love all of that information. Well, this platform, Conversations in the Nick of Time, we focus on leadership excellence, accidents, and equity, and everything in a couple things in between to bring us to the point of understanding that right where you are already in a position to lead. It's just a matter of how you manage that, how you do that, how you live that out and walk it out. And so from those amazing thought leaders and influencers and experts that we bring on into this space, they give you just that, the tools to walk it out, to work it out, to fight through it, to get through it. So today it's none other than an individual who has become very dear to my heart. You have seen her on this platform, those who have been following for a while, but it was literally at the very beginning of COVID. And we were still trying to figure out what it was, whatever it was, but people were hurting. And I immediately knew who to call to walk us through just getting through at that time. And so I want to bring to you and present to some, as a longtime grief specialist, Deborah Juniper-Frye. She has worked with countless families, individuals, and organizations through the grief process. She is the business owner of Grief Care Consulting LLC, a grief recovery method specialist with 23 years of grief expertise and experience, life and recovery coach, the author of 11 books. Got one right here, tabbed and ready to go. Let's see, 23, yeah. So 11 books to include Amazon's best-selling author 7 times. Amazon is international best-selling abroad as a military wife, resides in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and has been madly in love. Help us with the grief today. Madly in love with her husband, Michael, for over 36 years, which is truly a blessing. And if you follow her online, you see the madness, which is amazing. They have 3 adult children, Antoine, Michael Jr., and Whitney, as well as 3 grandchildren. And I see her just beaming, Antoine Jr., Aaliyah, and Raven.
Thank you so much for having me on this beautiful platform with your beautiful spirit. It just, it lightens my heart to see your smile and to know that I'm able to spend a little bit of time with you tonight.
Yes. I'm so excited about all the work. I mean, you have been busy, not only just in the space of grief, but getting others to understand the healing process, if I could use that language.
Yes.
To writing out their process. Let's just jump right in, and this is just conversation amongst friends here. This whole concept of grief and how we have approached it in the past, but now how employers are having to deal with a whole different space of grief.
Yes. It has kind of picked up as well, because now we have that mental health piece that grief tapped in, brought on by this pandemic that we've had to endure for the last 2 or 3 years. And I have been going out consulting businesses as they pour back into their employees, because they know that this pandemic has created grief. It has created hardships. It has created loss for a lot of employees. So the employers needed someone with grief expertise to come in. You've had employees that have passed due to pandemic, due to this pandemic, due to complications of COVID. So I've been called in to sit on site for a day at organizations, just in case somebody would like to come in to talk about how they're feeling. So employers are pouring into their employees more than I've seen when it comes to the grieving process, which is very important.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because that was not the norm in regards to, because let me back up a little bit. And so with me serving also in the space of higher education the past 20 years, and this past academic year, which would be 2021, 2022, one ending May of 22, it was the roughest year in higher ed I had ever experienced. And it was because we had individuals coming back on campus who had not been out in the world in the last year and a half. Some did not even complete high school, so they did not get that normal transition period from high school into college. They find themselves at college overwhelmed. Yeah,
and lost.
And that was the student body. But then we had the employees, as you said, that literally had to process certain things, because now you're talking, there's so many tentacles that you talk about COVID, and if you talk about the workplace or a higher ed campus, there's so many things are impacted.
Exactly. And then you have the space where some people did not want to come back, and they found other things to do in the interim so that they don't come back. So now the employer is having to hurry up and fill spaces of new faculty or new instructors. So there is a much, like you said, tentacles. There are there are a lot of moving pieces to this thing, to trying to get back to some kind of normalcy.
Right. And then understanding, what is normalcy moving forward, because the other flip side to this you were hitting on in regards to that grief and that loss. Some people found it a little more difficult to deal with.
Yes.
And so we had to find a way to put a whole wellness plan. But we dealt with so much suicide, completion of suicide.
Right. I mean, it has been tough. It has been tough, not to mention what you have to deal with on your own personal plate, what you have to eat on your own personal plate. And then having to help people process what they're dealing with. So it can be very tough. It can be very tough. It can be overwhelming. And there's just no more space almost to breathe. But that's when you know you have got to pull back. You've got to pull back into yourself.
Yeah. Now help us understand grief from a more broader perspective, because you've educated me on that. Walk us down that space.
Yeah, well, grief is a deep sadness. It is anything, a change in your lifestyle, a change in your daily routine. It is deep sadness. It is something that breaks your heart. It is a broken heart, grief. And that's not just due to the loss of loved ones. Grief is due to the pandemic we've just had to deal with. Grief is due to the the changes of having to deal with children that can't go to school or trying to get them reacclimated back to school. Grief is the hardship of losing the jobs through layoffs. And again, the grief of not having people come back into the normal workspace. So grief is any deep sadness that you could have, that change, because we are very we're very structured people, that we kind of go with the flow. And when we have that change, whether it's a death, whether it is schedule change, whether it is hardship, it kind of changes the trajectory of our thought, of our psyche, of what we have to do now to accommodate the change, whether it be in permanent or temporary.
Yeah, and I found an article, and there is some information. According to the childhood bereavement estimation model, 1 in 13, or nearly 8% of children in the US will experience the death of a parent or sibling by the age of 18.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Equating to 5.6 million bereaved US children and teens. This number more than doubled when it comes to those the age of 25, between that 18 to 25.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about that. We're talking about, it says more than 57%, and that was Children's Grief Awareness day.org.
Mm-hmm.
Then Interneva.com says more than 57% of Americans reported experiencing a major loss over the last 3 years. So that's 1 in 2.
Yeah. Yeah. That's 1 and 2. That's me or you.
Yeah.
1 or 2, me or you, or both.
I wanted to ground that.
Yeah.
What you were saying, because I know a lot of, again, it's still very hard to shift this meaning of grief, which is deep sadness. And we think it's loss of a parent, loss of a child, your spouse, but it is, you lost the job.
Yeah, it's everyday life.
It is your car didn't start.
Yeah, yeah, yes, a wayward child. It is so much more than just the death of a loved one, and we are so mechanical in dealing with the grief that we just kind of step over it and never cope with it, never give it ourselves time to process it. And I think this pandemic has given us it kind of set us back to where we had to start processing it, because it became too overwhelming, not knowing which way to go, what is going to happen, what is happening from this day to that day. So we had to start taking time out, doing better for ourselves, and kind of giving ourselves and others a little bit more grace, because things just did not work out in the normal process of the way it used to do.
Yeah, I want to come back to that word grace later on, before we wrap up. But staying in alignment with where you are now, a lot of times we busy ourselves. You were going into this, and I didn't want to miss this, because we busy ourselves to avoid dealing with the deep sadness.
Yes, yes.
And a lot of that was exposed. March of 2020, at least by May of 2020, we all were feeling some kind of way, because we were all stuck in the house. And we were
all in timeout. And we were all in timeout and having to deal with ourselves.
Yeah.
With ourselves.
Why is that? Why is you, as the expert, why does it, I mean, and just the residue is still here. It is not going anywhere. I think people, and that's why people are just not really, I don't think, they're like, okay, at this point, COVID is what it is. I'm taking the risk.
Right. I'm going out. I'm going to start trying to live again. But
now we're getting busy again. But help us understand, as you said, what was so great about this time out for you as a grief?
I had to start looking and evaluating myself. because this COVID put us in a space of having some alone time. You wasn't able to go out and socialize and do all of those things. So, and then when we had to stay in our homes, you had to start doing stuff within your homes. You had to start looking around and saying, how did I let the house get this way? Because we're busy. So we had to start decluttering some things and throwing out some things and refreshing our space to give our mind a little bit of refreshing as well. So, for me, that is what the pandemic did for me. I was able to pull back, cut out doing things that I did not need to continue to do any longer. We're so busy that 50% of the stuff we do, it is just business. Don't have no business doing it. Yeah. You need to leave it alone and just stop it. And that's what I did. And then look inward and do stuff that makes you feel better. Pull your dreams, your goals, and your aspirations back up and revamp those things. And because, I did a t-shirt that this 2020 pandemic is going to either make you better or bitter. So do something so that when it's over, when you come back out of the house, you've gotten a certification, you have decluttered some things, you've gotten yourself better financially, mentally, emotionally. Do something that would have made yourself a little bit better. So for me, that was the space that I was in. I wanted to declutter. And that was not just the house, that was my spirit, that was my mind. So it helped me tremendously.
But have you sensed that this whole idea of decluttering within, many of us are not ready to have those conversations.
Yeah, we're not ready to look in the mirror. We're not ready. I would tell my clients, before you put on makeup, I want you to look in the mirror and give yourself affirmations. Strip down who God made you to be without adorning yourself with any beautification. Yeah. Love who you are first before he gives you that beautiful face that we put on in the morning. So, I taught people to just do some self-affirmations, some self-love, because we don't want to look inward. We don't want to look at our past mistakes. We don't want to look at our past failures because they don't feel good. They bring on grief. And grief is not a good feeling. It just isn't.
No, but even though it isn't. But I have found that
it is necessary.
Going there, I was going to say, I have found that if you stop running from it, and stop masking it, that there is truly a blessing or blessings
and strength.
And there is a ripple effect from all that. So it's not just about you as an individual, but it's about all these other people that are around you. It's just
that are connected with you. Yeah.
Because if we're talking about grief, deep sadness, and even if we did want to pull the example of losing a lost one, what happens in that scenario?
Yeah.
Huddle all around us. They're there to support us. They're there to bring food, flowers. They're providing care.
They're providing care. And then once everything is over, the care dwindles away and you still have to deal with yourself.
Yeah.
You still have to deal with your emotion. You still have to deal with handling the business, because once all of that is done, that is when grieving really begins, because now you have to go into the spaces where your loved one used to be, and you have to clear out. You have to look through stuff. You have to do things that you just didn't want to do without them being here.
Yeah, and it's the same, using the example of the loss of a job, as you mentioned earlier. You still have to go back and clean the space. You still have to do the paperwork.
Yes.
You still have to, and no different than a car. You've got to see it be towed away. Maybe.
Yeah.
And you got to go the process to get another one, and just the inconvenience of it.
Yeah, we are people we are gatherers. So that meaning we're collectors. We are very good in collecting and gathering things. We're not so good when it comes to losing and having to give away. So you have to balance that out. And it's always good to give stuff away before it's taken away, that kind of thing. So we are so good at really collecting and gathering, but not so good at giving and losing.
Yeah.
And losing. There's a process.
So in this whole process of losing, walk us through some steps or some recommendations that we could actually apply. Because I know even with this platform being very focused on methods of leadership, leaders go through grief all the time.
Yeah.
And they're not just carrying it up for themselves, but also the grief of their teams.
Right.
Even if they're a solopreneur, you still have a team because you have you have people that you're ordering supplies from. The list goes on. So again, back to that ripple effect, understanding that this is a real issue that we have to tap into and unpack if we're wanting to live an abundant life here on earth.
Right. One of my male co-authors of the book Grief Through His Eyes, he said just the other day that we forget to learn the lesson in the loss. We forget to learn our lessons as we're going through hardship or as we're going through the sadness. Always look for the lesson. And I thought that was very intriguing because we just kind of sit in the emotion and we don't look for the lesson right off the bat, which will bring the process to an end a little quicker, I think. It'll let you see what's happening a little sooner. So I thought that was really good when he had mentioned look for the lesson in all of the losses.
I know some people will argue, are you kidding me? I'm grieving. I'm in deep sadness. What do you mean learn the lesson?
Yeah.
Is that like a muscle we learn to exercise?
It is a muscle because, I tell people, even in our grief, we're our first initiators. You have to do something about the way you're feeling because there is no, people are not going to come to pull you out of your grief without your permission. So you have to give yourself permission to be led to cope in grief or be led to classes or be led to counseling. And that is your intentional will. So even in grief, even when I'm sad, even when we're crying, we do have the muscle to learn something in the lesson. Even as we're crying out for God to help us or what have you, it will come. Okay. It will come. It will come. And that's why it's very important to stay connected in your core circle. Don't let grief isolate you. Don't let grief put you in a dark space that you will not reach out of. You got to call for help even if it's just to say, even if it's just to yell the word help, you got to call for help. And even when you're around a core team, people that know you, they are able to identify when you need help most of the time, and you're just not calling out for help. And I say that in a predicament when you're MIA. You're not out with the girls anymore, and they're asking, well, where is she? How long have you seen her? Or how long have you spoke to her? So they are collaborating together for your well-being. So that's why it's very important to stay connected to your girlfriends or your family, your friends, somebody that know you well enough that they can come and help you.
Yeah, and even if I've learned in my few years on earth and sometimes it's okay to even tell those individuals or that individual, I don't really feel like talking, but I don't want to be alone.
That's right. That's right. I'm struggling today. I just can't seem to get it together, you know? And that's when the person, your friend will say, well, look, I'm just going to come over. You don't have to talk. I'm just going to sit over here and, you know, when you're ready to put me out, you know? So, yeah, so that was a good analogy there.
Good. Now there are, you can kind of find some of anywhere if you Google, for those who want to learn more about this next part of our conversation, which is the stages of grief. And I know there is so much taboo around these phases. Many people think you've got to go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4, but let's just define what those are. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So walk us through denial.
Yeah, denial is, you know, and no, and they don't come in any particular order. You can stay in one more than the other. Denial is just unbelief. You just cannot believe that this thing has happened. I can't believe that this took place. I can't believe that I've worked this job for 25 years and they want to lay me off in the middle of a pandemic when I need structure the most. Or, you know, I can't believe that, you know, that I've lost my child. It is just not being able to believe what has just taken place. So here again, and because grief can put us in a space of just staring off in space. A grief is such a gut punch that it can throw you for a moment of just disbelief, you know. And then you have the bargaining where, you know, Lord, if you would save them, I will serve you. Or if you would do this for me, Lord, I won't drink anymore. Or, you know, so just bargaining, or if you would just let me have this, I'll make sure that I will do this for you. So you're just kind of bargaining your way through for the thing not to happen, or for it not to feel the way that it's feeling, you know.
Interesting. And so in this bargaining space, which is not one that we talk about most.
Sure.
Because it's usually the denial, the anger, the depression. Those are the top three that I'm most familiar with.
Yes.
Acceptance, we usually don't. I think that happens, but that's not something that we not as quickly have conversation about.
Right.
But this bargaining is something that we do.
Yeah.
And because I think it's, you know, it can also land just back in our lap to where it's like, if I had done.
Yeah.
Then
all those woulda, shoulda, couldas. Those woulda, shoulda, couldas, you know. Yeah. And, you know, and a lot of times we're bargaining after the fact that we know we're wrong, or we did something that we shouldn't have done, or, you know, so it comes out that way, you know, to try to fix it by compromising or giving something to get something.
Yeah. And then and like you said, we can find ourselves anywhere in that. I mean, they say that denial is the first phase.
Sure.
However, I could totally see how that not necessarily has to be the first phase.
Right.
It can. Right. I could see, you know, just thinking back over past law, you know, the first one that pops in my mind, I think it was more just the depression, the deep sadness part of it. There was a little bargaining.
Yeah. And when those terms came up, Kubler-Ross, she wrote a book, and she wrote those things when she was dealing with people that had lost loved ones. It was specifically for the loss of somebody. So those were the stages that she came up with as she was writing those things.
Yeah. And you mentioned in the book, Grieving Under Grace. Yes, it is on Amazon. Yes, and thank you. I actually sent one to someone
Awesome.
recently at
Awesome.
the radio station. So it says hardship, a situation in which, this is chapter 7, in which your life is difficult or unpleasant, or a thing hard to bear, specific cause of discomfort or suffering as poverty or pain. A lot of time, you say a lot of time, due to pride, embarrassment, or shame, we tend to keep our hardships secrets to ourselves, conditioning our minds to think we are the only ones going through and enduring this type of super special hardship.
Yeah.
It's easy to shut yourself in and close out the help that is right in front of you. This is a whole different spin when it comes to grieving, because this is over hardship, as we're talking about a different form. But due to pride and embarrassment or shame,
Sure,
we then go inward.
That's right. That's right. And we suffer through when, if you would have reached out and just said, I am having this problem, I don't know what to do. You can share it with somebody that's not able to help you, but they may have a source that can help you. And that's why it's always good to reach out. But because of putting ourselves into whatever hardship situation we may have been in, and every hardship is not self-inflicted. A hardship is a loss of a job. Nobody wants to lose their job. You're not doing anything to particularly lose your job, but because of cutbacks or something like that, it creates a hardship financially for you, and you may not be able to get back on your feet to pay those bills, or you'll get behind. So so that kind of thing, and I particularly, I think in the hardship, I had a family member that was living in a hotel, and somewhere down the line, I helped a young lady who was living in a hotel. I went into a store. I think I wrote it in that chapter. I went into a store, and she was working in the store, and she identified me by name. I didn't know who she was at that moment, because I did my transaction help before her over the phone. So she knew my name because of my hyphenated name. When she saw my ID, she called me by name, and she said, you don't know me by face, but you were the one that helped me to stay into my hotel room on this particular night. And I remember that. So, and I think I put in there that even though when you're going through hardships, still sow seeds of grace and as much help as you can to other people that are going through hardships, because it just kind of, what you give out, it comes back to you. So, so hardships are, it's not just about, here again, the loss of a loved one. It's about dealing with things that you feel ashamed about, that you're embarrassed about. And a lot of times there are people that are in our circles that can help us, if not to, and nothing else, but to point us in the direction of our help, if we would share.
And then you mentioned the idea, and you have coined it, self-inflicted hardships. Ones that we participate in, we see them coming. There are warnings. We just continue to go on with it. And I think as leaders, this is the space that we can find ourselves in
trouble.
And it can. One thing I am taking away already from this conversation is that you have to first do the work.
Yes.
Yourself, but whether you do or whether you don't, or whether you delay, other people are impacted.
Do, don't, or delay. I like that. Do,
don't, or delay the whole process. And then I'm not saying that to sound an alarm, like hurry up and get through it.
Right.
But understand your process, even just I think the acknowledgement.
Yes.
And I know when I'm having a tough moment, and I use the term, I feel off-centered.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not centered.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I'm not centered, but sometimes in the past,
Yeah.
let me say oftentimes in the past, I would still push through and try to still show up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you can't show up and I'm grieving.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it comes off.
Yeah.
But then now a self-inflicted hardship, because
Yeah.
now I've had a ripple effect because I've pushed through and
You push
I've
through.
engaged other people and I'm not 100.
That's right. That's right. And they're either feeling your vibe, or you've given so much energy out that now once you get back into your space, you feel worse.
Yeah.
Or it's taking you a little longer to get yourself centered again. If you would have stepped back when you knew you had no more energy to give, you know. So that's the important thing, that we must replenish ourselves, because an empty pot you just cannot pour. There's nothing, you're not pouring your best. You're not pouring your best tea when you don't have that stuff, you have it back in you. You're not pouring your best tea.
It's true.
Yeah.
I love that. And see, I'm a tea drinker. and what happens is, if you're not careful,
yeah,
that loose leaf, those grains,
they get into the
bitterness.
Yes.
It's a bitterness, and that's not good.
Yes, right. That's right. You're not at your best pouring your tea if you have not centered yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to touch on this word grace, but I also want to touch on this idea of grief and gender.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Grief and gender, because
Yes.
I see a theme. I don't know if this was intentional, but I see something that a theme that is rising up in your work.
Mm-hmm.
And let's go with gender.
Yes.
Grieving and gender first.
Yeah, with gender, men grieve totally different than women.
And we need to give them space, right?
And we need to give them space. I actually, my latest book, Grief Through His Eyes, Seeing Grief from His Point of View. And my co-authors are all men. They're all men. So I had 14 male co-authors that wrote a chapter in this book about their grief. So
tell us, wait, pump the brakes. Tell us a little bit about that, because men don't express that.
Man, I'm telling you, the Lord gave me this idea well over 2 years ago, but I didn't feel qualified to do this particular kind of work. And it was through the pandemic that I started honing in on anthologies and writing more. And when the Lord woke me up October of last year, gave me the layout and everything for the book, I knew it was my green light to do it before procrastination got a hold of me. So I started moving on it quickly. And he gave me the title, Grief Through His Eyes, Seeing Grief from His Point of View. And he told me not to get women to write, because women, we have so many opportunities to do everything, okay? We have a smorgasbord of everything out there for us to do. He told me that I want you to bring the men to the table. I want you to prepare the table, give them a seat, and let them serve their stories to the world. So Grief Through His Eyes, it is a #1 bestseller. And all of the co-authors are men from all walks of life, all ages. And they talked about church hurt. They talked about self-shame. They talked about racism. They talked about loss of a loved one, of course. They talked about the fatherless champion. My father was there, but I didn't get the love from a father. A son longing for a father's love. Heartache to healing, the closed door, good grief, father, uncle, finally I can live again. Those are all of the titles from the men, the chapter titles from the men in the book. So men don't grieve the same as women. They don't express themselves, but in this book, it is full of beautiful nuggets. It is heartfelt. It is authentic. It's an authentic read. And every woman should have this book to hear the heart of men,
Now, this process, when you identified the men, was that a hard sell to get them to say, I need you
Yeah.
I need you to strip and get
Yeah.
naked?
Yeah. It was in the beginning. But I told them that, and I went for men that wanted to share their stories. They wanted to share the story, but didn't know how, didn't know where to start. So I gave them the platform of collaboration. I'm going to coach you. I'm going to tell you everything you need to do, but you have to do the work and do your story. And then on the other side, I'm going to have a editor for you. I'm going to have a proofreader for you. We're going to help you put it together to where you're proud of your piece. So, and that is how they started coming on board, just wanted a chance to write their story. In the midst, they didn't know how to get it started, but most of them, once they got past the first paragraph, it just flowed because it was something that was pent up in them that they didn't know that they wanted to share, but they needed to share.
Yeah. And what would you say has been some of the feedback of the process from those authors?
Man, some of them say that this is when they have started reliving again. One of the authors, The Locked Door, he said that his door has been unlocked after 50 years because some of them kept their secrets within them where their family didn't even know about it until they read their stories. And they are just all so proud of their work. They're so proud of their work. They are all over the place. One author is just coming back from Jamaica. He was giving books out in Jamaica. I mean, they're just all over the place because they have ownership within Grief Through His Eyes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It is just amazing. I'm sitting here listening to you, and then just the titles alone.
Yeah. Phenomenal.
Where I know some tears were shed.
Oh, yes.
I know some healing has taken place.
Oh, yes.
And while this was for that targeted group,
mm-hmm.
and I understand the importance of you've got to get it out. Because we try to, again, as we mentioned earlier, we cover it up, we
mm-hmm.
put on makeup, put on the lashes, get a the little designer purse.
That's right, honey. Get our little red lipstick and we out the door, honey.
Oh yeah, this is the feel good.
Yeah, that's the feel good, honey. We out the door.
but broken.
Mm-hmm.
Shattered on the end.
Shattered. I would tell people, we always have a Kool-Aid smile on our face. And we, how you doing? Hey sis, how you doing? If you were to stop and say, I am not doing well today. I'm just not doing good. It would almost put the other sister in shock because we're not that truthful with one another.
And that's if we stood still long enough to even hear it.
Absolutely. While we still walking past, with our little high heels on. And
so I'm hearing intentionality. We need to check in.
That's right. We need to check in. We need to check in.
There is, oh my gosh, I cannot believe her name is escaping me at the moment, but she's out of St. Louis. And she has been writing also, but she has this a slogan in her name. I'm looking at her face, beautiful face. But she did during COVID, she launched this campaign, Check on Your Strong Friends.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, when I tell you, like that landed so different for me because it was the strong people. Those are the ones that they're moving so fast and they're walking and you're like, oh, hey, how you doing? How things going? But you're saying that to the air.
Yeah. And it's those strong friends that bear the burden of so many people because they're the strong person.
Yeah.
And they take it, and then they have to go into behind closed doors and almost deflate themselves.
Yeah. And so with that, and this writing, I know this writing brought about healing. What are some strategies that we can adopt? Understanding now that we all will deal with it. And what was that stat? 53 or 57%?
Yeah.
Meaning it's going to be, if it's two people in the room, one of you are dealing with something.
Yeah, that's right. Number one thing is self-care.
Okay. And what does that mean?
That means taking care of self. Instead of giving so much of your energy for others, save some for yourself. Self-care, putting yourself on your schedule. Put yourself on your schedule.
I love that.
You know, put yourself on your schedule once a week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, go and get a massage or a pamper session once a month, or however many times you can do it, depending on how long your money is. You know, go out for some brisk walks. A lot of times we're so used to jumping in a car and going everywhere we need to go. Go out in nature, journal, listen to beautiful music. There are so many things that can quiet our minds. And if you're always in the business of everything, go outside and just sit in quiet. Listen to your own.
You have to be ready for that one.
Yes, yes. Listen to your own thoughts.
Yeah, you have to be ready.
Listen to your own thoughts. Talk to yourself. You know, write down some goals in the quiet.
Yeah. And I've learned even write down what it is that you're feeling.
Yeah. I tell people, go and get the prettiest little notebook from the store. Go to the dollar store, get a notebook. If you want a fancy pen, get that too. And get you some journal time in. You know, put a candle on and sit down and write about how your day went, or you know what your dreams and aspirations are. There are so many things we can write about. Write about what you're sad about, what sad thoughts you may be having. You know.
Speaking of affirmations, cannot not address this word grace. We hear it bouncing everywhere.
Yeah.
But not necessarily meaning or being used in the proper context. What is grace? How does it show up?
Grace is unmerited favor. Grace is getting something that we do not deserve.
Yes.
Grace is giving something that the other person doesn't deserve, but you give it because you want it to be returned to you. So that's what I mean when I say grace. You know, people are having a hard time. And if we learn to sprinkle grace on them, you'll see that they would appreciate it. And it will come back to you. I just believe grace begets grace. I just believe it, you know, and, Grieving Under Grace. That was the title of my first book, Straight from Heaven Again. But I believe that grace begets grace, and God wants us to sprinkle grace on one another as we're going through this thing called life, because it's hard. It's hard and it's difficult some days.
It is. And it's a matter of, slowing down.
Yeah.
Slowing down, catch your breath. Even if you're in the midst of something, they call it meta moments. And there's a whole bunch of research. You can Google it, META moments.
Meta moments.
And these meta moments, they use it also in the K through 12. Very popular there. And what it is, when you feel like things are kind of spiraling out of control, or you're feeling like overwhelmed, or as if you're feeling with anxiety, stop in silence and breathe, even, and count backwards from 10, and give it, and you can do that even in the presence of someone as an adult. And I've learned, take those moments.
Yeah.
It may feel awkward.
Yeah. But it gives you that little space that you need.
That can change the trajectory of whatever that situation is.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And we're still talking about grief, because it can be serious, a whole nother level of grief.
Yes, ma'am.
If you don't take a moment, right?
Yes, we need a time out. Yeah. So grace is just very important.
Okay. Kill them with kindness is what
Kill them with kindness.
Because you're right. It comes back.
Yeah, it comes back.
And even if it doesn't in that same form, be mindful. It has not been forgotten.
Yes. Absolutely.
So you have the books. People can find your books on Amazon.
People can find the books on Amazon. Just Google go to Amazon, Deborah Frye, You'll be able to find the books. I have an author's page. Even my anthologies are tied to my name as well, that I have collaborated with other authors and visionaries.
Okay. And then your website is?
www.griefcareconsulting.com. griefcareconsulting.com.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then what's next?
Well, next is I am going to, I'm looking into doing a nonprofit. And I'm going to do volume 2 of this book. So I already have male authors that are lined up to do a volume 2 because they have stories within them. And this volume 1 has just been phenomenal. If as folks have been watching, and now they want to become a part of volume 2. So I'm going to do that. I'm working on a few more anthologies before the end of the year. I have been nominated as Author of the Year for an Archie Award. So prayerfully that will come through. And then I will be doing some global speaking sessions on 2 different women conferences. One is in September, and then the other one is in October. So, and then once I get towards the end of the year, I will regroup and refocus and get ready for 2023 if the Lord says the same.
That's wonderful. And I'm glad that you shared and overshared with all that you're going on, but that means we just need to be tuned in.
Yeah.
You're going to land.
Mm.
But you made sure you put you in that calendar on the end of the year.
Yes, I did.
I will wind down and read.
Yeah.
Because again, while you are the counselor
Mm-hmm.
and the one we come to help us through all these situations, right, or for advice,
yes,
you're constantly giving out.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say you cannot give.
Yeah.
As they say, you can't give from an empty cup.
Cannot.
But you can't give what you don't have.
Can't give what you don't have. Can't give what you don't have. And although helping the brokenhearted over the bridge of grief, it is my passion. It is my purpose that I know I've been tagged for to do in this life. But yes, I do get tired as well. And I know that I have to pull back so that I can always, like you said, come out and be my best for people because I need to help them over their broken bridge.
Right. And
yeah,
for us to not take that lightly, and it's not a sense of weakness. We are human beings.
Right.
And again, you have to refuel. You can't drive a car and drive it 2 weeks
empty. The red light is on, honey. You still trying to push that pedal.
And it said, "Oh, I got you. Let me just shut off here."
And then when you shut off, you go into a panic mode. You're calling somebody.
Yeah.
When you knew you should have parked the car.
That's right. Or took it to get some gas.
Take it to get some gas. Come on. Yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah, we do. We be pushing it.
Right.
We be pushing it. I mean, my husband has gotten into the car. He said, honey, why is the light on?
But that's what we do. We find comfort in that.
We find comfort. And I can say, look, I got 13 more miles I can go in this thing.
Because now they fancy and they're going to tell you.
Oh my God. So yeah, you got it. You got to do what you have to do before you run out of the gas.
You have the platform as we wrap up to give a message to individuals who may be still like, I'm good. Share with them some thoughts in regards to understanding this is not a sign of weakness. This is a sign of strength.
Right. When you have to convince yourself that you're good, you're usually not. When you got to try to convince yourself that you're doing good, reach out to family, friends. And if you need some counseling, let's get some counseling. Reach out to somebody to talk to. A lot of times, things that we are going through, we just need a listening heart. Yeah. We need a listening heart that's non-judgmental and that you can share and get that load off of your back, get that load out of you. And most importantly, I want people to know that grief is hard. Grief is hard, but you are able to endure it. God has just made us that way. You know, that when you think back, maybe the beginning of this year, you didn't think you could make it through certain things. Last year, you didn't think you can make it through. And here we are today. Either you're listening to me, we're talking, we're conversating. So you're able to endure. You're able to overcome, get some coping skills, Google grief, broken heart, whatever you need, Google. Google is your number one friend right now. Google it and get some tools that can help you through those things, because grief is it is self-initiating. You have to do something to help yourself get better. You have to do something. You have to give yourself permission to grieve, permission to cope, a space to grieve, so you're able to endure and you're able to overcome. Now, when I say overcome, I don't mean leave the thought of your loved one behind. I don't mean forget what has happened. I mean overcome, find yourself into a space of joy. Reach back and get those good things that have happened. Renew joy. Find yourself some peace. Find yourself here again, beginning again with new hope. You know, a new way of doing things, although it could be painful to try to move on from certain things. You are able to begin again. You are, and you're never alone. Never, ever alone. A lot of times our mind may think that we are in a space where nobody knows, but we are more alike than we are disalike. So stay connected.
Yeah.
Stay connected.
Thanks to our sponsors, KSTL Jubilee 690, Sparkman Publications, and Covenant Exchange LLC. Thank you so much for your continued support. And to you, thank you so much for all that you do. Don't forget, you already possess everything you need to be successful and living out success as you define it. Don't forget, you already got it. So in the meantime, go be great, but slow it down.